So I just wanted to do a quick video regarding an article I read the other day with some research that's doing the rounds now, and it also did the rounds about 6 years ago, 2015, where certain researchers say that the ancients probably couldn't see blue because they didn't have precise vocabulary to about blue, and not the word blue doesn't, according to them, occur in historical writings. And for me, it kind of epitomizes a lot why I wanted to start this channel, which originally, when I thought about it, I wanted to call it Primary Sources, because through all the years I've been very fond of history and what our forefathers, so to say, have left for us of writing and legends. I've been more and more struck of the extreme skepticism that a lot of modern science has for human, like the human verbal traditions, and also the older ancient traditions. It's like per default they either lie or they exaggerate, and I don't know how many times such assumptions have been put to the axe by facts. And those are just the things that we've discovered. Like, for example, Troy for many years was seen, or since the Enlightenment era, people started to see it as the stuff of legends, and it didn't myth. It didn't exist, and of course that was all untrue. It did, of course, exist. And while I was growing up and went to school, we didn't learn anything about the particulars of the Norse sagas. We of course learned about the Viking Age and history, but it was we didn't learn anything about the kings or the wars, or anything that was specifically described in the sagas, at least where I went. I think this is also the case for many Norwegians. You learned what the historians thought the average inhabitant in medieval times and Viking times, what their life was. What did they eat? How did they work? And of course these things are interesting. But on the other hand, everything that had been delivered in writing was viewed with extreme skepticism. And of course, gradually through archaeological findings, we find that a lot of what was written was actually very true. So this research, coming back to that ancients didn't see blue, they cite many sources that they've checked where blue isn't mentioned, and many of these written here traditions I don't know so much about, but I know a little bit about Nordic saga literature, and they quote they mention that they'd gone through all the Icelandic sagas, and blue isn't mentioned. And I find this a little funny, because to my memory, blue is mentioned, perhaps the color besides red that is mentioned the most. So I went to check in the original Norse texts just quickly to see, was I wrong, or perhaps they haven't read the Icelandic sagas. So if we just start with the most famous collection of sagas, which is Heimskringla, which I'm doing the series on. So in the first paragraph of Ynglinga saga, there's talking about Serkland. Sumir javna henne ved Blåland Mikla. So some compared her to Blåland the Great. The Great Blåland. And blå is the color blue. That's what the Norse called sub-Saharan Africa. They called it Blåland probably because of the dark skin color. People there. And in the same paragraph, it's also again mentioned Blåland, and it also says Þar eru og blåmenn. There are also blåmenn in that area. So blå, already in the first paragraph of the most famous Icelandic, well, it's a Norse saga, but written in Iceland. So I mean, maybe they were only reading the sagas that were about Icelandic things. We'll come back to that. Maybe there was no blue there. But anyway, in the first paragraph of Ynglinga Saga, blue is already there. And later in Ynglinga Saga, blom himni und blom himni, as a line in a poem. This is, and the blue heavens, the blue sky. So again, blue is there. And in Harald Feinher's saga, these are just quickly the examples that I found of blue in the sagas. Blånaði þú aðrir allir líka minn. So it's a corpse that turns blue. And Sigurður, who was the father of Harald Hardrade, and the foster father of Olav Haraldsson, Olav the Holy, he's described in Heimskringla as this. His clothes. Han hafði kjortel, blån, og blår hoser. And again, he had a blue kjortel. Kjortel. It's like a long coat, not like a thick coat, but like a long sweater almost, long coat. And hosur, those are pants, blue pants. So, and then maybe one could argue that the word doesn't mean blue. Blå in Norse isn't the same as blå in Danish, Scandinavian, Norwegian, Icelandic, and Faroese, and all the Scandinavian countries now, which I think is a very far stretch, especially since blå in the sagas is used to describe water. It's used to describe the heavens. So, yeah. And regarding the Icelandic sagas, I just quickly looked in Íslendinga bók, in the third paragraph, it's talking about a person who owned the lands in Blåskogen, the blue forests. So also in Iceland, they knew the word blue. So in Landnáma bók, there's also a place called Blåserkir. Blue shirt or dress. It's in connection with a glacier mentioned there. And also in glaciers you find in Norway also, like Blåskavlen, which is outside Auriland. So blå is used for place names back in the day. And this brings us to names. So you have Blåserkir in Iceland, you have Blåskavlen in Auriland, and some place there's also in mountains are used. There's a place in Hemsedal, between Hemsedal and Ål in Hallingdal, where you have Blåbergi, the Blue Mountains. And these mountain names are very some place names in Norway are younger than Viking. Anything mountain that is called Tin has been named after Norse times. It's not an old way to name mountains. But Blåbergi lies in an area where the old names are intact. For example, not too far from Blåbergi, you have Gryting Mountains, Vesle gryting, store gryting. These come from grjot in Old Norse. So Blå and Blåbergi makes sense because they are located at a place where it's people don't live really close, and they always look blue in the horizon. And then you also have the names, like why would they call Harald Blåtann for Harald Blåtann if they didn't, know if they didn't have the word for blue and didn't know what it looked like. So Blåtann means blue tooth. So it's a shame with these this attitude, like if you go in the mountains in Norway, there's like if you want to go on a trip in the mountains, it's like a general advice that many know, that it's a good idea to ask the locals what are kind of the peculiarities with this area, weather patterns, or is there anything I have to be careful with. You go and ask the locals, and if you get into trouble because of specific conditions for that area and you didn't ask the locals, it's a little bit foolish. And I feel sometimes we have this attitude of hybris towards our traditions, that we don't ask the locals. So when we read the sagas with very large amounts of skepticism, and we view everything within this 18th century Darwinian lens that says everybody before was probably a little bit stupider, a little bit generally less of a evolved human than we are now, we risk not listening to the locals. I mean, these were the people who lived close to the time, to the conditions, and like us, maybe one person had a propensity for exaggerating violence, one had a propensity for exaggerating danger, one had a propensity for exaggerating, whatever is closest or to their heart, either in a good way or in a bad way. And I think a lot of people naturally have that with them. You don't need to just have this very looking down attitude, which I feel this kind of ancients didn't see blue, didn't have a word for it, and it seems like I'm not saying that the researchers are strictly like that, but it seems it comes out of this pitfall of modernistic science thinking, that you reduce everything to the material. So anyway, they shouldn't be using the Norse sagas as a source for their theory. Quite evidently, blue was part of the vocabulary and their experience. Also Håkon Jarl, who was in Trondheim, it says specifically that his sails on his ships were sewn together in red, green and blue. So their green is differentiated from blue, which is often one thing in these articles is mentioned, that they couldn't really see green and blue are mixed up and they didn't see a difference. But they're not mixed up in the Norse sagas. And I suspect if you look closer deeper in Roman and Greek literature, you won't find these foolish mix-ups. So that was that on blue. And see you in the next video.